Our next speaker is a Ventura County supervisor on his second term. Ventura County, incidentally, has some of the most restrictive building regulations anywhere in the country. And they've gone beyond the, just from a building regulation standpoint, into adding their own version of what should be an endangered species. So these are species that are not on any state or federal endangered species list, but they've come up with 170 different species of animals and plants. They're in a special interest category. So if you're doing any kind of development, you have to actually go through and get a impact study done, not just on what would be an endangered species, but there's other 170 species. So please welcome Ventura County Supervisor Peter Foy.
This could be a number one fan right here. Hey. Are you as depressed as I am listening to some of that stuff? Isn't that unbelievable? It's unbelievable. Let me give you something to be proud of, though. You know, I get the opportunity, being a supervisor, to do a lot of great things. And one of the things I got the opportunity this week to do is the change of command out of Point Magoo, the military base we have out in Ventura County. It's a tremendous base. It's got 36,000 square miles of test range out in the ocean. It's got a lot of stuff. But the thing that makes it special is you get the opportunity to go out there and see the men and women who every day believe in this country, who protect us, who care about us, and are willing to lay their lives on the line, and the families that sacrifice as their loved ones go across the oceans to protect us. And it was just a tremendous thing to see the pomp and circumstance, the flag, how proud people are. These people that do everything for us, for this country. And when you see what we're dealing with today, when these people have fought and to give us rights and to allow us to live and do these things, and you see the other group of people, what we've seen here, take those rights away from us while we sleep, in a sense. And that's really what we've done. We've allowed this to happen. And it's just devastating. Some of the things that went on we talked about wilderness. What in your mind do you think of wilderness? You think of the woods and out there and that whole thing, and when you get to hike and you drive your car up and you get to go off and hike and anything else? That's not wilderness. That's not what they're thinking. When you talk about wilderness, these people came to me. I can't believe they came to me as a conservative person, but they came to me and said, I need your support. I said, what? We would like to take more of this land into wilderness, as she talked about. You know what you can't do in wilderness? You can't bring anything in that has a machinery or anything. So you can't drive up through wilderness and park and want to hike. You can't bring an automobile in. You can't bring a motorcycle in. You can't do it. It's nothing can go in there. Not even a chainsaw. Not even the people, our forestry people have to walk in with their axes. I don't care if it's 10 miles, whatever. You can bring nothing into those places. And that's why when you look at some of those people, my brother-in-law is in the forestry, and he said, this is the worst thing we've ever done, is try to take all this land and make it forestry. So there's some things out there that are just unbelievable when we deal with that. But one of the things I want to talk about, I talked a little bit this afternoon about, for a lot of you who weren't here, is we heard about it earlier today, or we heard about it, and that is being programmed, being educated. I believe that we have been educated, and it's gone for years and years and years, and it started almost 100 years ago. And I use it in something that's very important to all of us, and I call it taxes. And why I say that is because from the beginning of this country till 1913, how did we support the government? Where did they get their income? Tariffs, right. That's right. Tariffs, duties, that's how they got their income. And then in 1913, we passed a law, Congress passed them, that we're going to do income tax. And guess what? It wasn't on most of us. You got to be a millionaire back then in order for that to happen, right? So in 1913, what would that translate to being a millionaire back then to now? A multi-billionaire? So it was only on those billionaires. Does that sound familiar? Oh, only tax the rich? So what did they do? They programmed you to believe, okay, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me, let's just move forward. And then what did you see? Well, guess what? By 1918, they already collected $1 billion $1 billion in those 5 years. And then what else happened? Then all of a sudden we started to see, once this kind of took hold, they started to do what? Not just the millionaires anymore. It started to come down to the rest of us, didn't it? Started to come down to the rest of us. And when they got a hold of your income, they got a hold of everything. Now, we talked about this afternoon, a lot of people, and I asked them, I said, does the government own 100% of your income? I'll ask you, does it? Well, I hear yes, I hear no. What is that? Well, some say no. It's my money. I work hard for it. I get it, and I give the government a little bit in taxes. Others say yes. I'm going to tell you it's yes. The government owns your income, because right now, if you work, and you work for an employer, President Obama says you're going to tax these people 100%, Mr. Employer, otherwise you go to jail. He has no choice but to tax you 100%, doesn't he? And he takes your income. The government takes your income because this guy is required to do that. So the government owns your income. That's why it was said by one of our founding fathers that was the number one thing never to do was allow our incomes to be taxed. And that's why you never see it ever ratified. If you look through the Constitution, it was never ratified by the states, income tax. But let me tell you, this is just part of that program. And we got used to, okay, now we just pay taxes. And then all of a sudden we went into zoning laws, didn't we? Why were zoning laws put into place? And building safety laws? Protect you. It wasn't going to protect you. You wanted to make sure you walk in this building, it's not going to fall down. We understand that kind of stuff. Zoning laws, you want to make sure that you had a house and nobody built something, a 20-story building next to you. Okay, we understand that. But what we did is we slowly got programmed. The government can kind of tell us what to do with our property. And then I was talking to some people today. My next one is homeowner associations. Anybody involved with a homeowner association? Some of you, right? You go in there, what do? Tell you what you can do with your property, don't they? They tell you what you can do with your property. Now, as we talked earlier, if I walk in and I buy that and I know there's a homeowner association, here are the rules, I understand that. That's not as bad. But what usually happens? They change the rules, don't they? And that's not what I paid for when I went in. But again, we got programmed. We got educated on this is what you do. And this is what happens. All of these were done for a reason to protect you. The homeowner association says, well, this is how we keep your property values up. This is what we do for you. And so we got going down that path. And so now we look at, and you talk to people and say, well, I can't do that, I can't do this, this is what they do, government does this. All of a sudden, we slowly allow our property rights to be eroded. You go back to somebody who said, I owned a piece of property, 50, 60, 70 years from now, I could do what I wanted. I could do what I wanted. I wanted to build a barn. Nobody said a word, just build a barn and do it. And there's still some states. David and I spent time in Montana. It used to be it was only about 10, 12 years ago. You go in there, I want to build a barn on my property. Basically they come and say, why are you coming to us? Build it. What do we care? All the assessor wanted to do is he wanted to tax it. That's all that mattered. But now all of a sudden you have to do all of it, and you have to go through all these things that we've heard about. Again, we've been programmed to understand. We've been educated. And what it is we've been educated by the wrong group of people, haven't we? We've been educated to allow ourselves to give up our property rights. And all of it was that we believed it was for our own good. And I have supervisors on my board say, oh, this is all good government. To have a planning commissioner like this who understands this kind of stuff is unbelievable. And your supervisor appointed you is very fortunate to have that, because you don't get that. You don't get somebody who really understands and do it. But when you sit there and you hear of the hundreds of thousands of dollars people spend because of all these rules and laws, guess what? When that developer does that, he's spending that money. But who ultimately spends that money? Who pays it? You do. You do. Your projects that you bought into, your homes, your developments, when you go out, pay for something at a department store is all paid for by you because of these kind of things that went on. It's unbelievable. And you hear about in planning departments how they're fighting you. In our planning department, I tried to get flat rate fees. You do a permit, it costs you this much no matter what. There's no way. I couldn't get my other 4 supervisors to go along with that. I couldn't get the planning department going. You know why? Because when they're in there looking over your project and basically fighting against you for it, they're charging you for it at $158 an hour is what we pay. So all of a sudden, you got somebody on the other side that's supposed to be helping you get your project done, who doesn't really want to see your project done, but then is charging you for the work that they're doing against you. I'm just telling you, it's a crazy system that we live within. Would you say that's true? It's so true. It's just unbelievable. And you got people who come to me and say, supervisor, what do I do? This person doesn't want it. I've had some people, I've gone to the counter and they say, you are never going to get this project through. It's just not going to happen. They'll tell you up front. Why? Is there something in the rules I can't do it? No, I just don't want it to happen. Some are just honest about it. And you get these people and these planners coming out of these schools, and they are taught everything we just heard. Every single thing we heard. And the whole thing is you delay it, make it so expensive, and do it. Hopefully these people will give up. And you won't get it. And as he talked about, these environmental reports that are put out is unbelievable. I got one guy that's head of our public works, and he said, as of this point now, 50% of a project is now environmental cost. Would you say that's probably true? 50%. And you wonder why projects are so expensive. Not that the developer or anybody else is going to build anything any different than there's building standards and they know all this stuff. They're going to go through it. They're going to pay for all that. It's going to be put on a shelf. It meant nothing. Nobody looked at it. But you're going to pay for it. You are going to pay for that. This is taking your rights away because it's taking the money out of your pocket. It is destroying your opportunity to do whatever you need to do with your land. Whatever. And I come from a county. If I was to talk to Jim over here and ask him about this, you ever heard of our Ventura County? You've probably heard of some of the stuff we have. You heard of SOAR? Save Our Open Space, Agriculture and Open Space. And so you can go from one end of the county to the other, and all of a sudden we got a guy whose business backs up against a little bit of farmland, and it's an open space. And he would like to annex that in or use that or change that zoning. Under SOAR, it's a vote of the people. But it's not a vote of the local people. It's a vote of the county. So a guy has to run, I want to annex 3 acres so I could, and this is perfect. In my district, a guy has, right along the railroad tracks, when they get that commercial area, you can do it, and right backs up against him is this ag land. It's about 15 or 20 acres. Too small to farm, nobody can get into it, it's just terrible. So it sat for years, and he owned it because he had this thing with his lumber yard. But business got good, and I don't have enough land on my 5 or 6 acres. So I put down some base, and I put some of my lumber on that, on my own property. But they came back and said, you can't have lumber on ag land, except that every other county in the state calls lumber an ag product. Not in my county, you can't. You can't have that. So all of a sudden, this guy's fined. We have these fines that come in that were supposed to just motivate people to fix things at $1,000 a day. Anyway, this whole thing, we go through this whole bit, and they finally said, okay, we see it's really something that, you can't use the land. You only wanted a couple acres. Let's see what we can do. Well, by law, we can't do anything. It's open space. It's ag. It's prime ag land. Yeah, it's prime ag land. It hasn't been farmed in 40 years, but it's prime ag land. Anyway, now it says what you can do, though, is you can go to a SOAR vote, which means people 100 miles away are going to vote to see if you can allow to have these couple acres put in. But it's only going to cost you $1 million if you tag it in with the negative general election. Is that unbelievable? Is that unbelievable? Not somebody that's permanently putting a building on ag land or anything else. He's just putting base down so he can drive his forklifts on to put lumber on. And this is the kind of stuff that this goes on in my county. It's not as restrictive in some of these other counties. But this is the kind of thing that goes on. And what it is, and people are proud of it. I got one supervisor and I said, man, we've got to be the most restrictive county in California. He looks at me, we are, and probably the most restrictive county in the country. And they're proud of that. Everybody's heard of Santa Barbara as a real slow growth county, right? Santa Barbara grows at 1.5%. We're lucky to grow it at 0.75% because there's no ability to use land. As I said earlier, this is how far this stuff goes. The idea of a church right next to the city of Simi Valley, if you've been there, you've been to the Reagan Library. Simi Valley is in the Reagan Library. And it's where the Reagan Library is. Right there on this edge of town, there's this big, this whole open area. And there's 138 acres that were available. So this church said, I cannot find any land inside our city. We just like to take 5 or 7 acres, build this church, and we're going to donate all the rest of it to the library and all the open space up there so it'll all stay natural. And it's like no difference because it's right on the edge of the city. Not build. First of all, county. They couldn't. Said you can't. Anyway, you know what they did? So, in order to make sure that nobody built in the open space, nobody built on ag land, they said then we're going to have an assembly use piece, which means you can have no assembly, and everybody's treated equally. Everybody. Throughout the county of Ventura, there's no assembly use in open space now. So you tell me, what did that do to Harvard wants county. You can't do it. You have an assembly use. However, there is one group that can do it. State government can do it. State government doesn't have to follow any of those laws. They can come to whatever university they want in any place they want. Any place they want. Those are the kind of things that are going on. This is what's happened. We have allowed our rights to be taken from us. You heard all this, the things that are going on, but I'm just telling you, it's at a point now where it was, they turned up the stove, or they turned up the water, the boiling water, and the frog that was swimming around. But now they've just gone and said, we're grabbing it. We're taking it. And it got so bad when the president got elected here and people felt like they were empowered. In my county, they did what they call an overlay in some areas. They tried to push. And the strongest environmentalists, couple supervisors, tried to push this on areas where they took this whole overlay of thousands and thousands of acres and said, we're going to totally control what you do on every little thing, even to the point where on any type of hill, the most you can build is 1,200 square feet. I don't care if you paid $10 million for this beautiful lot. That's all you can do. And even at that point, the people then finally backed out and said, we're going to fight. And they got up and fought. But it was only because it was such that this supervisor felt empowered because the Obama administration, what they were doing, he jumped in, and we're going to do the same thing. And finally, the people just said no. But, so he goes around the other way and slowly starts again, turn the heat up, and don't go after it. That's what happened. You know what? This is an opportunity for us to pay attention to what's going on and to do something. At some point, we get past a tipping point where we've educated our kids and they don't know the difference. A lot of us are old enough to know when it was easy to do things in California. See, I look at California as the land of opportunity. California has always been the land of opportunity. How many of you remember, how many of you were around here in the 1960s and 70s? Oh, a good group of you. And when everybody said, well, first of all, let me just tell you, when you travel overseas, you come from California, what do they talk about? Hey, in Hollywood, you must see all those stars. You guys see all this stuff, right? I don't hear them saying that. I want to be careful what I say here. I don't hear them saying that about North Dakota. I don't hear them saying that about Iowa. It's all about California. California has this special place in all of our hearts, especially as Californians, but around the world. But back in the 60s and 70s, what did we have in California? We had more cars being produced than any place outside of Michigan, didn't we? We had best shipyards in the country here in California. We had the greatest aerospace industry here in California. We had more agriculture produced here in California. We had more high-tech California, more movies in California. We had it all in California. You all look like the same kind of people that, like you said, they were here 30, 40 years ago. Has anything changed? No. No, nothing's changed with you, but the people and the decisions that are made have all changed, haven't they? The water we don't have because trillions of gallons go out to the ocean, as we saw, right? We can't, you can't be a person who has a great idea to be an animator and say, I'd love to build the greatest place on earth and go to Anaheim, find a strawberry field, and build Disneyland anymore, can you? No, you can't do that anymore, can you? That's what's happened to California. Not you, the people, but the rules and regulations we've allowed to be taken from us. That's what's happened. We still have the opportunity to have California be the greatest place. I believe California and this nation, immigrants come here for what reason? Because the streets are paved with gold. And they're not nuggets of gold, they're paved with the gold of opportunity. And we have the opportunity right now to say enough is enough, to fight back on all the things that we've heard, and to say we will take California back. I still believe the way California goes, the nation goes. We've seen it go on this environmental side, haven't we? The way California goes, the nation's gone the other way. We have the opportunity to turn it around. This economy is in the dumps, and a lot of it is because of what we see here. We have the opportunity to change it. So I look forward to seeing every one of you take action to make a difference. But let me just say one thing here that I have to say. We did a video. I don't know if you've probably seen David's face in all of our videos for AFP, but there's a piece here that talks about that we just did in the video that I like to read here. It's from our founding fathers, John Adams, and he once warned, the moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the law of God, and that there is not a force of law and a public justice to protect it, anarchy and tyranny commence. Right? If it's not as sacred as the law of God, once they grab your property, they've got everything. Thank you.
All right, we have a special...